We've appealed to the city, to Mr. Sawyer Jones, to the city attorney's office to enforce terms of the lease, and it didn't happen. And honestly, I'll go through and address some of the points that the city attorney and the Cultural Affairs Department have raised, but the reality is that before the city sent its notice of default in November of last year, I contacted the city's attorney's office, both Ms. Wax and Mr. Andy Nokus, and said, we probably need a divorce. We probably need out of this, because we're never going to get the space we need. We're never going to get the Joint Management Committee. One of the main concerns here that we sued on was to form the Joint Management Committee. And we brought a preliminary injunction to have the Joint Management Committee appointed. Do you know who opposed it? City Attorney's Office. And they're in here saying that the Joint Management Committee wasn't formed, yet we filed a court injunction to have it formed, and the City Attorney's Office opposed it, as well as the theater. So from the beginning, the theater has not wanted to have joint management, has not wanted to have independent oversight of the use of money, and the situation is intolerable for my client. It's ironic that I contacted the city attorney and said we were thinking about leaving before the NOD came, but that's how it happened. And in particular, Mr. Sawyer Jones brought up that BOMA account. We asked for transparency. We asked for an independent audit that we would pay for blindly, so the auditor wouldn't know who was paying him. Again, who objected to the independent audit? City Attorney's Office and the theater. We wanted transparency as to where that BOMA money went. We wanted transparency as to where the renovation money went, and we were going to pay for it blindly, so the auditor didn't know who was paying. And there were objections in court by both the city and the theater. So when you ask what happened to the BOMA money, we want to know too. Our preliminary audit found that over $325,000 of the BOMA account was used to pay salaries, not used for building and maintenance, used to pay for wigs, artistic productions, curtains, things like that. Those are not building maintenance expenses. All money generated by third-party activities is to be used to pay for the maintenance and building of the building. Again, we asked for an accounting of that money, and we never got it. We think the renovations were all meant to be paid for out of a $4 million grant by the CCHE. Again, we sought an independent audit of how that money was used. The city and the theater objected to an independent audit as to how that money was used. Unfortunately, it's our opinion and impression that the theater has better political contacts than we do, and that they've, in fact, pursued a political process rather than the legal process, which we commenced to try to resolve the parties' disputes. We're relegated to a basement that's about 2/3 the size of this. That's a museum, and the lease requires us to operate in a world-class manner, yet the theater refuses to let us use the primary museum display space, which is the lobby. And again, I had to go to court, and I got an injunction in May of 2010 to allow us to use the lobby for the first time in over 4 years of being in the building. They wouldn't let us use the lobby. And again, their own disclosures in response to the NOD indicate that they make $350,000 doing that. They use about $200,000 to pay for the building. You guys, if you're going to let them stay, can find out what they do with that other $150,000, because it's not being put in the facilities management account, as Mr. Sawyer said it should be. Where did that money go? You guys can find out. We're asking that the city sign a settlement agreement because, unfortunately, the theater insisted that we sue the city in its lawsuit. The theater. We didn't sue the city in this lawsuit. The theater demurred and said the city was a necessary party and and forced us to bring you into the. If the city wants to continue to look at whether or not the theater should be in the building, that's the city's prerogative, but as far as the museum is concerned, it's never going to get a fair shake. It's never going to get to use the space it needs. It's never going to get the accounting and transparency as to where the money went and what the money was used for. And to be frank, under those circumstances, the museum feels it just has to move on, and it's probably best for everybody involved. Brings an end to the lawsuit, the whole 9 yards.